Has Arizona basketball found its lineup going forward? And can you run off some key wins here?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. This show is brought to you today by FanDuel. Check it out at FanDuel. You can put down $5 and you get $250 in free plays if that bet hits, but you got to be a new customer. All right, now, Arizona basketball, my friend. Arizona is now 2-0 in the conference. Very, very good. We very much like that. Also, now, when it comes to how we got here and how this is all playing out, there's been a few key emergences, and that first one would be Henri Veesaar. Henri Veesaar has been very, very good, and not only has he been very, very good, he has been a difference maker. We got to give Tommy Lloyd a lot of credit here. I did not think that Henri was going to be good. I didn't really see anything from him, but Henri has turned out to be very, very good for Arizona. And I think with Arizona, the best thing about that you can tell is that he is giving you a little bit of a margin for error. And I think that's the exciting part about all of this. And you don't really generally expect that from a guy like Henri, is that he's blocking shots, he's shooting the ball, he's just doing a lot of really, really good things. And I think that's the exciting part about what Henri is able to do, is that he is doing some very good things for Arizona, and he's playing with a toughness that I think is very, very, very impressive for Arizona. Excited to see how this one does all play out, but overall, pretty good stuff. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's not. You got to be pretty excited, I think, about what you've seen so far from Henri Veesaar, and honestly, I think he's given you something that Krivas would have never been able to give you. Krivas was the problem with Krivas, and again, Krivas has some real skill to him. The problem with Krivas, though, is Krivas is slow. He is slow, and he is slow. So there is that. He has not been. He has not been. He just wasn't good. Henri can move better. Henri can just do a lot of things better, and I got to give Henri a lot of credit for that. So it seems that Arizona has found its. Arizona has found its. Probably its big man here. Now, again, we're going to get into it. Some of the other issues here, but I think the issue though too with this team is that. Well, yes, you found Henri. Henri's obviously been very good, but you got some other issues. Now we're going to get to those. But now we need to talk about Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant has been absolutely fantastic for Arizona. He is you just got to play him more. That's the best way that I excuse me. That's the best way that I can say it. You just got to play more. He can shoot the three. He's turning into a fairly decent rebounder. He is just he's that guy that you look at and you're like, all right, there's a lot to like there. And not only is there a lot to like, there's a lot where you're like, okay, I could see a potential here for Arizona to really kind of have that next level spacer that we have not necessarily had here in a while. His spacing has been, like I said, his shooting, his confidence is through the roof right now, and I think that's what's exciting about this. He's shooting every single shot, and he's shooting it with confidence, and I think that's something that you look at and you're like, man, could use some more of that. So Carter and Veesaar. Listen, I know it's not perfect, but those are clearly your best options up front. And then I think at that small forward position, KJ. Listen, I think at this stage with KJ, you kind of know just basically that with KJ, it's an interesting situation because he can't really dribble the ball, but he can finish around. I mean, he can generally finish around the hoop. He can get there, and when he's playing within himself, he can do some really good things. And I think with KJ, that's where you're kind of, that's where you're just kind of sitting in on, hoping that KJ could continue to just play to his strengths, because if KJ plays to his strengths, KJ is a pretty good basketball player, and KJ is an impactful basketball player. And that second half against Cincinnati, every time Cincinnati was making that run, KJ was the one that was kind of stifling it. So there's that. I mean, he was getting into the paint, he was making some shots. He's just got to continue to do that. But when he, really starts to try to create outside of like two power dribbles, that ball's probably going the other way. So that he's got to be smart about how he's doing it. But when he's doing that, he turns into a pretty darn good basketball player. Caleb Love, listen, Caleb Love did not have a good game. Caleb Love, I think the thing about Caleb Love that is will always be kind of annoying is that there's always a couple mental lapses where it's just kind of like, what are you doing there? And it's with the passes, the careless passes, and that's something I think is going to continue to be an issue. But I do think we can look at this though and also say to ourselves that while those careless passes, he also got to the free throw line. That's something I've been big on. He's got to get to the free throw line, and if he can get to the free throw line, that's generally a sign that he is trying, and that he is trying to get, that he is not just settling for the 3-point shot, which can be very, very annoying when he's just settling for the 3-point shot. That has got to be, that can't just be something that he's totally relying on. And so, that's kind of where we are. That's kind of where we are at with that one. Now, when it comes to the rest of this team, then Jaden Bradley, I love Jaden Bradley. Jaden Bradley just got to keep doing what Jaden Bradley is doing. You do you, Jaden, because with Bradley, he's just a kind of a quiet assassin, in that he just can get downhill, he can get to the hoop, and when he gets to the hoop, he can finish. He's just a good basketball player. Now, I think the thing that's annoying, the kind of annoying, is obviously Arizona doesn't really have a backup point guard option, and that to me is still going back to the charity scholarships, in that you don't need necessarily you don't listen, like somebody like Conrad. I know people like Conrad, and he's looked good against bad teams. I get it, but the problem with Conrad is if I can't play you against good teams, which Tommy Lloyd clearly doesn't feel comfortable doing, then that's just an issue. And that's something that I don't really think is going to be corrected, to be honest with you. I think with Conrad, he's just not quite good enough. He's just a little too small. He's just not quite that dude, and I think that's the issue that you're going to keep running into with Conrad. Again, I think Conrad can do some nice things. He's definitely better than I thought, but at the same time, though, you also can watch him for about 5 minutes and be like, all right, that's going to be a problem against, your teams like your Houstons, your Kansas, your things like that, because that's just somebody where he's just not quite good enough. And I think I think a little bit of the issue that you're going to come across. Arizona doesn't really have a backup point guard, and I think that's a big problem with it. Now, when it comes to where the rest of this squad is, though, you got some things that you got to figure out here. And a big part of what you got to figure out too is, well, again, you've got that core five. That's a pretty good core five. But I think the problem that you're going to keep encountering is what to do about Tobe Awaka and Trey Townsend on the court at the same time. And that's just not. I just don't know that is sustainable. When they are both out there, it becomes bad, and it becomes bad pretty quickly. And the reason why is because they're both about 6'6", and neither one can finish around the basket because they have no lift, they have no elevation whatsoever. And the other problem is that they don't really rebound against good teams. Awaka tries really hard, but again, he's just not. He doesn't have any lift, and his hands aren't very good. Also, Townsend doesn't try very hard. Townsend doesn't box out. Townsend just kind of lets the ball just kind of go over, and where he just kind of looks at it like, oh, maybe I should get that. You can't really have two power forwards that don't really do anything, and that's kind of what Arizona is pushing out there with both those guys, is that you got two power forwards that just really aren't doing anything. And you saw that in the second half against Cincinnati. The second those two guys went into the game, it was, you know, Cincinnati went on their run because you just got, again, now some of it too was that turnover. I get that. But you just got two guys that just aren't very good. And they're fine playing. I call them the Edgerson twins, but that's because they're fine playing 10 minutes per game. But if you're playing them more than that, then I think that you're kind of in a spot where it's like, all right, this just isn't really sustainable. Now, we're going to continue to keep talking about that because I think that's something that we got to, Tommy Lloyd's got to figure out. But first, FanDuel, my friends, FanDuel. All right, like we talked about earlier with FanDuel, the great thing about FanDuel is you can put down $5 and you can get $250 in free plays if that bet hits. That simple, that easy. Again, but you got to be a new customer. You got the NFL playoffs are here, my friend. College football playoffs are here, my friend. All kinds of good stuff. And I think with FanDuel, the thing that's also exciting about all of this, too, is that your money's good. You got the NBA. You got college basketball here. You got a smorgasbord of different things that you can get into. And I think that's the exciting part about all of this is you've got a lot of different things that you can get into here. And with FanDuel, the one thing about it is that you know that you're a little bit ahead of the game. You know that you're a little bit, that you feel you got a little bit of an advantage. Hop in there during a live bet, or again a future, or something like that. But either way, FanDuel is where you want to do all of your stuff. They got a great deal. So again, check it out at FanDuel.com. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about where we're at now with, again, the front court. I am fine with having a Waka or Townsend in there, one of them. I can't have both of them because when they're both in there, it just devolves, and it devolves quickly. And Tommy clearly likes that lineup to a certain degree. I'm not sure why, but the plus minuses with both those two on the court is not good. It is, matter of fact, it is terrible. They, like I said, there's a lot of good things that they can do. Just playing together, or well, no, there's not a lot of good things they can do, but playing together is definitely not one of them because they are going to give up offensive rebounds like crazy. And the thing that bothers me so much about Trey Townsend is what a limited motor player he is. He doesn't try hard. He doesn't box out. He just stands there, and he doesn't really do a lot of different. He doesn't really do a lot of different things. Now listen, he's definitely better than a Waka. He's a little bit more skilled. He's definitely more skilled than a Waka, but their limitations kind of come out to the same thing. A Waka tries harder, but a Waka also just can't do anything. So listen, one of them's fine, but it's very difficult to have them both in there together. And if you got them both in there together, you're playing with fire because you're not going to be going very far. And I think that's something that Lloyd has to. I think that's something that Lloyd honestly just has to figure out because you're just not going to do much with both those dudes in the game at the same time. And teams just go on runs. So that's why if one of them is in there with Henry, cool. Or I mean, heck, even Carter, because Carter can space the court, but both together, not good. Okay, now you look at ahead a little bit for this Arizona team, and it's kind of fascinating to be honest with you because there's a lot of different. There's some very winnable games going forward. I mean, you look at it, you don't have something where you're going into Hilton Coliseum, or you don't have anything where it's like, all right, here's where oh, well, that's a game that Probably not going to be able to win that game. Arizona doesn't really have those. You've got some very winnable games. You've got West Virginia, which we're going to get into. DeVries probably out. So if DeVries is out, that's obviously good for Arizona. And then after that, you got UCF. Then you got Baylor coming here. Baylor is a very winnable game because, again, Baylor has just not been as good as people thought. And, again, they don't really defend either. So that's a winnable game. Then you got your Texas, excuse me. Then you got your Texas Techs, your Oklahoma States. I mean, you got some very Colorado. You've got some very winnable games going forward. And if you're Arizona, that's something you got to take advantage of because, listen, in the out of conference, you lost basically every game against every good team. That part is very frustrating because some of those games you should have won. UCLA, you should have won. And, games like that, you should have won. But at the same stage, you've also got a situation where you can make up for it. Listen, TCU, you took care of TCU. Cincinnati, it was way closer than it should have been, but at the same time, you still got the win. Now going and you got the road win as well. Now you're going to West Virginia. If you could get another road win in the Big 12, all of a sudden you're like, man, things start looking up a little bit here because getting road wins is not easy. And when I say getting road wins not easy, especially in the Big 12, I mean, Cincinnati is a good basketball team. They're not a great basketball team, but they're a good basketball team. And Arizona was in Arizona, when they decided to stop putting in the Ederson twins together, Arizona went on runs. Arizona was just better. And I think that's something that's exciting. Now, again, Cincinnati couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in that game. But you know what? I'm not going to make any apologies because Arizona's been in situations where they haven't been able to hit the broadside of a barn either. So I think that all kind of evens out. Going into West Virginia, you're kind of playing with house money on this road trip. But now you want to get greedy. Now you want to be able to get this next victory. You get this next victory, and I think all of a sudden you're like, all right, now things start to really kind of heat up then for Arizona. And I think that's the exciting part to all of this is that things can really start to heat up if you're the Wildcats. And so we will see how this one's all gonna play out. But Arizona's put themselves back in a position now where you can look at it and be like, okay. You got some things that are starting to occur. Some things that are starting to some things that are you look at and you're like, all right, where can Arizona do this? It's going to be exciting to see how this does play out. So we will see. Overall, though, I do think that we are also at a point too where you also know that Arizona, you win these games. You're going to be in a lot better spot. You're going to be in a lot better spot than I think people originally thought that you were probably going to be. So, again, we'll see how that one does play out. But overall, so far, so good for Arizona basketball. Because, again, you got a front-loaded schedule here. You look on the back end, you're going to have to go into Kansas. You're going to have to go in, I believe, Iowa State as well. There's going to be you got Houston. There's going to be some games that are going to be very difficult for you to win. And so you want to be able to, again, you want to get greedy. You want to be able to win these games where you can win these games. And then I think you just kind of take the rest from there and just kind of see how that one does play out. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the strengths to this team and where you could really see this playing out. But first, game time, my friends. Game time. Check out Game Time. Here's the deal with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Okay. Here's the deal with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time. What time is it? Game Time. Ooh. Now, here's the cool thing about it, too, is that they've got all kinds of really good deals here. And they got, you can toggle the feature prices with a total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And with Game Time, again, You can use these for sporting events. You can use these for concerts. Game Time is just kind of your one-stop shop, and I think that's the exciting part about Game Time is that again you know that your money is good with Game Time, and because again you want to check it out, and you can also find out and know to yourself too that with Game Time, just do it. Again, concerts, sporting events, all kinds of different stuff. You will thank me later. Game Time. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now Arizona's lineup then, where you've got a situation where you've got a let's see here, where you've got a Carter Bryant, where you have got a Henri Veesaar. That's a nice little front court, to be quite frank. That's a very nice little front court because there's a lot of different things that you can do with that front court because you can block shots. You got a little bit of shooting as well. There's just some other things that are just very nice about what you're able to do with that front court. So you got to give it a little bit of credit on that one. So again, see how that one does play out. But Carter being able to shoot, being able to shoot the heck out of the basketball has been a very good thing for the U of A. And honestly, with Carter, you also know too that he's just going to only get better. So I think you definitely found something in that front court. I think you also found something too with with KJ Lewis, where if he's playing to his strengths, he's going to play pretty good basketball. And that's something that that's something that you absolutely 100% need from KJ Lewis is to just play to his strengths and play good basketball. And at that point, then you'll deal with it. Caleb Love getting to the free throw line. Jaden Bradley just being Jaden Bradley. Jaden Bradley's not going to be Mike Bibby. I get it. Jaden Bradley's not going to be somebody where you're like, all right, he's just the consummate floor general. That's not his game. His game is going to be being a pest defensively, making the hockey assist, and getting to the basket. But he's a winning basketball player. I think he's the most low maintenance basketball player on this entire team, and he's somebody that is somebody that's very easy to root for. And I think that's something that you got to keep going back to is that he's an easy dude to root for, and he's like I said, he's just a good dude. I think that's where you look at it from an Arizona perspective and be like, okay, all right, that's what you want to roll with. Now, with some of these other dudes, though, ADO is going to be limited to matchups. With ADO, there's going to be some games where ADO is ready to rock and roll, and he's going to be shooting the heck out of the ball. There's also going to be some games where ADO is just not good enough, where he's just kind of the dude where you're like, all right, this ain't going to be your game because you don't defend. And listen, I mean, he's just not a good defender. There's no way around it, but I also don't really care about that as much because there's a lot of guys on this team that just aren't good defenders. And so that feels to me like a reason just not to play somebody. So we'll see about that one. But again, West Virginia, if you could get this win, all of a sudden you're 3-0 in the Big 12, and I think you start feeling pretty good about things. You got UCF coming to McHale, and then you got some other winnable games as well, and that's where I think it just becomes fascinating from an Arizona perspective. How many of these, you want to get greedy, how many of these can you continue to run off? How many of these can you continue to start and really get moving here, and we'll find that one out. But either way, that game against Cincinnati was a very much needed win, and again, you're 2-0 in conference, and you just got to keep pushing that one. All right, now tomorrow we're going to preview West Virginia a little bit. We're also going to talk about Arizona football recruiting because there has been some good news on the Arizona football recruiting front, mainly stealing a player from Jed Fish, who decided he didn't want to go up to SRS, smelly, rainy Seattle. Do you blame him, though, for not wanting to go up to SRS? I don't. You shouldn't either. But again, we got a lot to get to. Things are looking up in the new year. Now, listen, things probably couldn't get much worse than they were in 2024 for Arizona fans. That is always what we go with here. That is always the motto, that things can't get worse. And they haven't. So far, Arizona's undefeated in conference play, and Arizona football has at least shown some decent movement as well. We'll see how that continues to play out. But again, so far so good when it comes to all of this, and just an exciting time, and we will see how this all does play out. But as always, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and again, we will be back with you tomorrow, breaking everything down, hopefully previewing a West Virginia victory for the Wildcats. TTFN, Tata for now, and thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day.